The Democratic Alliance has accused Deputy President Paul Mashatile of lying and misleading the country. Now, this after one of the 8 VIP presidential protection police officers who allegedly assaulted the VW Polo driver earlier this month told the court that Mashatile was part of the convoy when the incident happened along the N1 highway in Johannesburg earlier this month. Mashatile previously released a statement to the media saying that he was not with the security team at the time of the incident. Now, Morning Live attempted to get comment from the Deputy President last night, to no avail. We're still trying, but for the time being, for a further comment on this particular matter, we joined virtually by Democratic Alliance Shadow Minister of Police, Andrew Whitfield. Andrew, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live. Thanks very much for having me. So, very interesting, the latest development in this particular saga. But what exactly do you make of the fact that Deputy President Paul Mashatile was allegedly part of the convoy, as revealed yesterday by one of the security officers?
Well, we were always deeply suspicious around the behavior of these VIP protection officers. And then, obviously, the Deputy President's statement that he wasn't there didn't seem to make sense. We now know, according to one of the VIP protection officers, that he was in fact there, and it confirms what we said at the outset, that if he was in the convoy and he sat by and did nothing, he sets an example at some of the highest levels of government, which is completely unacceptable. He holds the second highest office in the land and ostensibly may become the president one day, and allows police officers to break the law in this manner under his watch. It's completely unacceptable. He's clearly not fit for the office that he serves. He swore to uphold the Constitution. He did not do that. And he must be held accountable politically and potentially legally for presiding over this kind of conduct from his protection officers, when clearly there was no threat. If you look at the number of police officers and the number of vehicles against one little Polo on the side of the road.
So at this point, Andrew, I mean, very strong sentiments that you are expressing as the Democratic Alliance. But have we proven beyond any reasonable doubt that the Deputy President was, in fact, on the scene, or is it possible that he could have been part of a convoy and the vehicle that he was in may not necessarily have stopped at that particular point? Or are you absolutely certain at this point that he was there and he essentially bore witness to what played out?
Well, as I said, if he was there, then he did oversee this conduct or this misconduct. It's our strong suspicion that he was there. It's been confirmed in court that he was part of the convoy. Whether his vehicle stopped or didn't stop, I'm sure will come out in time. We have submitted a PIA application, which is a Promotion of Access to Information Act application, in order to gather details of who, in fact, was in the convoy. And then we will have it in black and white, but I'm sure that it'll come out in court before the Deputy President's office releases that information to us, if they do that at all. But it is clear, one thing is 100% clear, is that the Deputy President has been caught up in a lie. His office said he was not part of the convoy. It's been confirmed in court under oath by a police officer that he was part of the convoy. The details surrounding whether he was there when all of the vehicles stopped, I'm sure will come out in the court proceedings and expose the Deputy President. Nonetheless, what we have here is a culture of impunity in the South African Police Service. Whether it's the Deputy President or the Minister of Police, this culture of impunity has been allowed to proliferate within the South African Police Service under the leadership of these politicians. They set the example for this kind of conduct. They don't ensure that there's consequence management and proper discipline protocols put in place, and make sure that IPID is given sufficient independence to probe police misconduct. And so this culture is enabled by politicians like Paul Mashatile, Minister Bekele, and others, who simply allow their egos to override the principle and the rule of law.
So we still await, though, the further details about, what exactly happened. As you said, the PIA application will probably assist with that. But how does the Democratic Alliance plan on treating this matter going forward?
Well, we're certainly not going to let go of it. As I said, the PIA application will hopefully bring to light some more information. We are monitoring this case very closely. We have members of the party that are monitoring the case in court. We will be taking this matter up in Parliament when it reconvenes in September, and we will make sure that the South African public get the answers they deserve. At the heart of this, what we need is transparency and then accountability. There needs to be consequence management. And we've made a commitment to the South African public that we won't let this go. And there is damning evidence, we've all seen it, of the kind of police abuse at the hands of these blue light bullies that simply cannot go unpunished. And so, this is a huge test for government. It's a huge test for our criminal justice system to ensure that we send a strong message to the bullies and the corrupt criminal individuals within the South African Police Service that the Constitution and the rule of law is sacrosanct, and you cannot trample over those documents with the impunity that you've enjoyed up to now. We cannot allow this culture of police abuse to continue in South Africa. We need to send a strong message, and we hope that this will be the case to do that.
And Andrew, you've been a very busy, shadow minister of police, because you actually laid charges against Police Minister Bheki Cele and the National Police Commissioner Fani Masamula, among others, yesterday as well. Can we just talk to that briefly in terms of what that relates to?
Certainly, Sakina. So I was in Cape Town yesterday to lay charges against the Minister of Police and the National Police Commissioner for contravention of the RICA Act. And the RICA Act, as we know, is the legislation which enables or prohibits and prevents or regulates the interception of communications, telecommunications in particular. And we laid criminal charges against the Minister and the National Police Commissioner for being in possession of what is known as spy grabber technology without the relevant exemption certificate, which is required in terms of the Act. In terms of the RICA Act, if you wish to procure and possess and utilize spy grabber technology to intercept communication, you need to have an exemption certificate first. We know that SAP spent over 100 million rand on a number of different devices in 2019 before they had the exemption certificate granted. And so they knowingly went and procured this equipment unlawfully and have been in possession of it unlawfully since 2019, knowing that they didn't have an exemption certificate, which was only now granted 2 months ago in Parliament. And so it's a very serious offence, because we cannot allow senior members of the police service to preside over a department that is knowingly breaking the law. It's completely against the Constitution and the rule of law, and speaks to the breakdown that we're seeing in society, where criminals don't abide by the rule of law because our political leaders and national sort of civil society leaders, or civil service, the National Police Commission and the civil service are not abiding by the rule of law.
So just on a point of clarity in that regard, Andrew, you speak about the exemption certificate that needed to have been obtained prior to the purchasing of the grabber equipment. Now, does that mean that you cannot buy the equipment unless you already have that exemption certificate? Or does it simply mean that you cannot use the equipment unless you have the exemption certificate?
You cannot purchase, possess, or utilize that equipment, Sakina. The Act is very clear. Simply being in possession of the equipment is an offence in terms of the RICA Act. And so whether they've used it or not, obviously that would be very serious if they had used it without the exemption certificate, because there's no RICA judge that would have allowed them the approval to intercept communications unless they have an exemption certificate. And so they would have been doing that unlawfully as well. But if they've not used it, that's still not relevant. I mean, it's irrelevant because they have been in possession of it. So they've still broken the law. And we need to get to the bottom of it. And unfortunately, the minister has gone quiet on that issue, and he's gone quiet on the blue light bullies. It's clear that he doesn't want to touch the hot potatoes that are necessary in order to reform the South African Police Service. And rooting out corruption, maladministration, and this kind of flagrant disregard for the law is absolutely essential to that. And that is what a minister should be doing. A minister should be at the center of reforming the South African Police Service. not continuing down the same path that we've seen of late.
So once again, as we wrap up this interview, Andrew, so what is to unfold from this particular case now that you have laid the charges? What are your expectations in this regard?
Well, our expectation is that SAPS will investigate the Minister and the National Police Commissioner, but we're not also going to hold our breath and leave it there. We're going to submit a PIA application to both the National Police Commissioner's office and the Minister of Police's office in order to get all relevant details surrounding the procurement of that technology. We're also going to be calling on the Auditor General to do a specific deep dive audit into this procurement irregularity and make sure that they are able to uncover as much of the truth as possible, collect all of the facts and present that to Parliament. The Portfolio Committee on Police needs to exercise its responsibilities in terms of its oversight function in order to hold SAPS accountable. And that's what I intend to do by calling the Auditor General to the committee to present on its findings on this matter. I think will give South Africans a tremendous amount of clarity regarding the spy grabber equipment. And we will continue to monitor those criminal charges and make sure that the Directorate for Priority Crimes Investigation, the Hawks, take this matter seriously.
And just a final question. I mean, you made it quite clear that the police are not supposed to be in possession of this equipment without the necessary exemption certificate. But are you able to independently verify whether that equipment would have been used at all prior to it being acquired by the South African Police Service?
Well, I think that might be tricky, Sakina. The world of crime and intelligence is a shady and murky place. I suspect that we'll be slapped with all sorts of sort of notices to say that things are classified. But yes, I would imagine that one could approach the RICA judge. The RICA judge could come to Parliament in a confidential sitting, I would presume, in a joint standing committee of intelligence, and present to that committee the facts to say, well, we did receive applications from SAPS to make use of the following technology in the following cases, and that was either granted or not granted. If that route wasn't followed, it would be very difficult to prove. But, who knows? Maybe we'll find a whistleblower in the South African Police Service who's sick and tired of seeing the deterioration of that service, which places ultimately South African citizens' lives at risk.
Well, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thanks for your time. Democratic Alliance Shadow Minister of Police Andrew Whitfield, after the party has accused Deputy President Paul Mashatile of lying and misleading the country regarding being part of that convoy after the assault that took place on the N1. And of course, also talking to us about the charges laid against the Police Minister Bheki Cele and the National Police Commissioner Fani Masemola in the spy grabbing equipment saga.